We tend to think of death as, well, as the ultimate inevitable, right? Like gravity. It's just this law of the universe that says, the party has to end.
Yeah, that's the standard view.
But what if it isn't a law? What if death is a specific creature that you could actually catch and execute?
And that's exactly where we're going today. We're looking at sources that, they span from 7th century Islamic tradition all the way to modern biogerontology.
The topic is the death of death.
It's one of those rare moments where ancient theology and futurist science seem to be saying the same thing. They both treat death not as a natural cycle, but as an antagonist.
An enemy to be defeated.
Exactly. An enemy that humanity is, it seems, desperate to destroy.
And the imagery in the religious texts, it is startlingly concrete. The Hadith sources describe Judgment Day, and death itself is brought forward.
And it's not a metaphor, not a skeleton in a robe?
No, it's a physical ram. A black and white ram. They call it Kash Amla.
Right, and that visual detail is so important. The sources say the colors aren't random at all. The white represents mercy, the relief that death can bring to someone in pain. But the black, that represents terror, the calamity it brings to a tyrant.
So it's the complete duality of our experience with mortality all in one animal.
Precisely. It's everything we fear, and at the same time, everything that gives us rest.
And then comes the moment that just flips the entire script.
The slaughter.
The ram is killed right there between paradise and hell, and an announcement is made, eternity for you and no death.
And the psychological impact of that is just massive. The sources say, for those in hell, it destroys what they call the nihilist hope.
The hope that eventually it'll all just end, that they'll cease to exist.
Exactly. That escape hatch is gone.
Yeah.
But for the people in paradise, it cures that nagging feeling, that almost imposter syndrome.
You mean that feeling that even when things are perfect, you're just waiting for the other shoe to drop?
Yeah. That constant low-level anxiety that it's all going to end.
Yeah.
By slaughtering the ram, you remove that scarcity, that deadline. You can finally just be.
Okay, but removing the deadline, that triggers the classic philosophical trap, doesn't it?
The boredom thesis.
Right. Bernard Williams, or even in pop culture like The Good Place, if you live forever, eventually you've done everything. Eternal life just becomes eternal boredom.
And that's the standard objection, yeah. A static human can't handle a dynamic eternity. But the Islamic sources have a really fascinating counter-argument for this.
Okay.
It's a concept called tajdid, or infinite renewal. They describe, for example, a Friday market, where people go each week and they return with added luster, added beauty.
So it's not just that their environment changes, but they themselves change.
That's it, exactly. You can't get bored of eternity if the you who's experiencing it isn't static. If you're constantly evolving, constantly being upgraded, then the experience is always fresh.
You never run out of new because you are always becoming new.
Mm-hmm.
This whole idea of death as this monster that has to be slain, it sounds almost identical to Nick Bostrom's fable of the dragon tyrant.
The structure of the story is the same, just secularized. Bostrom argues that humanity has a kind of Stockholm syndrome with death.
We tell ourselves it gives life meaning because we can't stop it.
Right. He sees death as a dragon devouring thousands of people every day, and he says we have a moral imperative to go out and slay it.
And that's driving actual science. We're talking about researchers like Aubrey de Grey, the SCNS Research Foundation.
And they're trying to operationalize this. They don't see death as some mystical force. To them, it's just molecular damage. It's an engineering problem.
It's entropy. And if you can fix the damage,
you kill the dragon. They call it longevity escape velocity.
Which is really the scientific attempt to do the exact same thing, to physically enact the slaughter of the ram.
It is. If you can repair biological damage faster than it accumulates, you break the cycle. The deadline becomes optional.
So whether it's a ram on Judgment Day or gene therapy in a lab in Silicon Valley, the fundamental human drive is the same. We are obsessed with getting rid of this last enemy.
We seem to be wired for survival, but we're trapped in a body that's wired for decay. All these sources, theological or scientific, they're just different weapons in the same war against our own expiration date.
Which leaves a pretty big question for you to think about. If death is the deadline that gives your life urgency, the reason you write that book or take that trip now, who would you become if that deadline was just erased? If the ram was slaughtered today, do you have what it takes to design a life for a dynamic eternity?
That is the ultimate question, isn't it?
Thanks for diving in with us.